Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Football Talk from the Yorkshire Post, where we'll be discussing some of the latest talking points from the world of football with members of our football writing team. On this week's episode, we're joined by Chief Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Stuart Rayner, and Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Wobschall, to discuss all of the latest developments affecting our local clubs. Don't forget you can keep up to date with all the football news across Yorkshire and beyond by logging onto our website at yp.sport@nationalworld.com, as well as checking out our various Twitter feeds, the main one being at YP Sport. If you search for Yorkshire Post Sport, Yorkshire Post Football, or even Sheffield Sport on Facebook, you can find us there as well. And if you have any questions for our writers, you can get in touch using those various Twitter or Facebook pages, or email us directly with the subject matter as Football Talk Podcast at yp.sport@nationalworld.com.
yorkshirepost.co.uk.
As mentioned earlier in the intro, this week we're joined by Chief Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Stuart Rayner, and Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Wobschall. Good morning, guys.
Morning. Hello.
Morning. Right, this week in the Championship, we saw Sheffield United claim all 3 points in their 1-0 win over Derby County. Middlesbrough fell to an agonising 3-2 defeat at the hands of Sunderland, and Sheffield Wednesday had to settle for a point in their 1-1 draw with Luton Town. In League One, Huddersfield Town lost 3-2 when they travelled to Northampton Town, and Barnsley had to share the points in their 1-1 draw with Burton Albion. Now in League Two, Doncaster Rovers continued their impressive run of form with a 2-1 victory over MK Dons. Bradford City suffered a small bump in their promotion push with a 1-0 defeat at Wimbledon, and we'll be covering them later on in the episode. And Harrogate Town shared the points in their 1-1 draw with Crewe Alexandra. However, this week we start with Leeds United, who sent their fans into seventh heaven with a comprehensive 7-0 thumping of Cardiff City, which was followed up by a 2-0 victory when they clashed with Coventry City. This now sees them 5 points clear at the top of the Championship. Now, what were your thoughts on the two performances, Leon?
Yeah, they've made a statement, haven't they? I mean, obviously the biggest home win since obviously that memorable day. A lot of us old enough will remember the old match of the day footage, Barry Davis and all that sort of thing when they beat Southampton 7-0 and, magnificent performance. And to be fair to the Cardiff keeper, Jack Hamwick, he was probably the best player. And if it wasn't for him, I think it could easily have been double figures. So that was a magical day that a lot of Leeds fans won't forget in a hurry. But I think when you've had such a good performance and victory as that, it's good to have a game relatively quickly, although it was obviously a tough game going to Coventry. They're flexing their muscles and making a bit of a move under Frank Lampard, and there's a lot of teams, spoken about this before, a lot of teams who are going to be fighting for those last two things, places in the playoffs. So their season's live. It looked, even though as well as Leeds had done, looked a tricky fixture in midweek, but went there and did the business again. An excellent away win, and 66 points. We're not even halfway through February. They're in a hell of a position, aren't they, Leeds? And I suppose they need to be in some respect because there's obviously teams chasing them. So yeah, two tremendous wins. Farker being Farker, he wasn't totally happy on Wednesday night. Leeds did miss a lot of chances, to be fair. They dominated the game, and there should have been a 3 or 4 goal victory certainly wouldn't have been flattering. Missed a few one-on-ones. Joe Perreault missed a big chance at the end. He was a little bit casual. 1 or 2 others as well. Dan James, but all things being equal, you'd take 2-0 at Coventry all day long. Given the form, it's been a sticky place for Leeds, and they're a pretty dangerous side. And just going really well we touched on it before, Stuart, as well. There's some big games in February, isn't there? They've got the Sunderland game on the horizon, the Sheffield United game at home, and Leeds are getting their ducks in a row at just the right time. Away from home, we've spoken as well before. If there's a little bit of an Achilles heel, a bit of an issue, it's probably been that, hasn't it, really? But you look at that, is it 4 clean sheets in 5? They're sort of getting the right sort of consistency there. They're scoring goals, they're churning out the clean sheets. I think it's something like 19 in 31, something like that. And they're in they're in a heck of a place. I mean, it's interesting. I thought that they could have maybe wanted this fixture. Obviously, had to be called off for the FA Cup. Shoving it further down the schedule, if you like, at some time later in the season, whether it's April or something like that, or some point in March. But they've it's worked to their advantage now, hasn't it? Points on the board, a sticky fixture. They've there may be a midweek somewhere down the line where Leeds aren't playing, but they've got those points in the bag from a hard game, and it's looking good for Daniel Farke. I'm sure he'll rest all his players. His sort of first choice league team for the cup game against Millwall, and then they'll be back in harness for the Watford game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important whatever team he picks against Millwall. They're clearly in a purple patch at the moment, just to keep it going. That's the thing. I mean, it was January last year they kicked into gear, and it was Coventry away when they slipped up, and that felt like a really significant moment last season. So to sort of bury that ghost, helpful too. They'll have enjoyed beating a Frank Lampard team as well, of course.
Oh, we got it. Yeah.
Lots of good elements to it. But yeah, I mean, Leon talks about the scheduling. I actually talked to Grant McCann about this this week because, when the fixture list served up, your games are when your games are. But when it comes to rearrangements, it's up to the clubs to decide. And McCann was saying in Doncaster's case, as the chasers in League Two, he kind of wanted to get ahead of the game and put some pressure on Walsall. And I think that's the advantage. I mean, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, with regards to Sheffield United playing first on the weekend, and they actually messed it up. But we talked about the psychology of going first and laying down the gauntlet, and that's the thing to do when you're the leaders, isn't it? Just rack up the pressure, pile up the points, and then say to other teams, right, what are you going to do about it, sort of thing. And then you hope that suddenly, all those draws at Burnley start to add up, and it becomes a problem. You hope that Sheffield United slip up somewhere. You hope that Sunderland sort of lose this knack of pulling points out the fire, and someone somewhere down the line ends up dropping out the race because you've just set too fierce a pace. And likewise, to go out and win a game 7-0 as opposed to just doing a job and winning 2 or 3-0, again, that sends out a message. Look, we're relentless in this race. We're going to keep going. I mean, it seems ridiculous to think it was only last week's podcast we were talking about, style and 0-0 draws and all this sort of thing. I say that side of it is very much down to personal taste. But when you look at the goals Leeds have scored and the goal difference, it's a phenomenal record. And as we always say, worth an extra point. So, I mean, as I say, when you're in this sort of run, it's just about keeping it going. And I think that the pleasing thing for me about the Cardiff game, looking from afar, was that you've got people coming off the bench and scoring goals and making contributions. Although the team's quite settled at the moment, it's not just those 11 players contributing. And that, again, is really important in the slog of the Championship, and when we're talking about this Millwall game in terms of others coming in, because, if, for argument's sake, Ramazani, Nonto, Joseph all start, there's absolutely no excuse for them not being right up for it. But they also look in actually decent rhythm at the moment and, able to do it. There shouldn't be too many excuses, I don't think. Leon saw both the games. I didn't, about rustiness of those guys on the field.
No. I think it's handy in that respect, this cup run, isn't it, for Leeds, and good in the respect it's at home as well on a Saturday. He's going to change his team basically, isn't he? And they've got a pretty good chance of getting through that. And obviously the next round, I'm sure he'd do the same again, wouldn't he? If it's in between some league matches. And he did have a quibble at Farke about, we should have boosted our goal difference more at Coventry, and it could sting us on another night. But I think inwardly he's going to be really pleased, isn't he? And
plus, the week isn't bad, is it?
Well, exactly. But it would have backfired, though, wouldn't you? If you can imagine they'd lost that game, they'd have had the Leeds punters are like, it's 24/7. They dissect everything. They'd have said, why didn't we play it further on in the season? And it would have given a huge boost, wouldn't it? I think to the likes of Burnley, they won the night before. Sunderland have got a great result at Middlesbrough. You've got And Sheffield United, obviously didn't hit the straps like Leeds did against Cardiff, but they still got 3 points, didn't they? That would have given them all those three sides a real big boost, wouldn't it? If Leeds had lost or dropped points at Coventry, but it's worked the other way for Leeds in that respect. And in a promotion race, it could be, I don't know, it could be, there's obviously 2 from 4. Which team handles that little bit of a bad spell, which might only, I don't know, it might only be 2 or 3 games, it might be a draw and a loss.
Yeah.
3 games. It could get down to that, couldn't it, really? I'm sure in the run-in, there's going to be a little point where, all the 4 teams have at least one result like that, or, if not 2, and, with the fine margins could well decide how it finishes up at, in early May, because it's, I know Leeds are 5 clear at the minute, but it's still pretty tight, isn't it?
Yeah, 5 can go pretty quickly, can't they? Sheffield United had that Middlesbrough Leeds week, didn't they? Yeah. Leeds had that start to the new year with a couple of draws. When it's that tight, that's all it can take. And it would have been the most Championships thing ever to win 7-0 and then lose on the midweek. So it says a lot for Leeds' relentlessness, professionalism, focus. Yeah. That they've got that job done. When, as Leon says, there's tiny doubts about them away from home, playing a good side in good form. Yeah. It was all there for them to slip up. So the fact that they haven't, it's really good. And say from their perspective, with Sunderland and Sheffield United on the horizon, they just want to still be in that form when those games come around, because you fancy them all day long playing as they are at the moment.
Yeah, I think the thing, just quickly with Leeds, I think there's going to be a hell of a lot of focus on these, the Sunderland and Sheffield United games. I think the danger with Leeds sometimes is when they play, the sides who are slightly, of a lower ranking, they just drop a little bit in intensity. They've got a tricky game at Watford. That's, for an example, they've got to go to QPR. One of the teams like that, Portsmouth even, when you just, Farker's all about focus and intensity, isn't he? And not dropping off. And I think he'll know that. That's just a little thing, because you look at the teams who, they lost it. Was it Millwall, wasn't it, early in the season? They lost there. They weren't quite at it. A tough venue. So that's the little thing. Just not get sort of too carried away. Although, to be fair to Farker, he never does. But just watch those sort of mid-ranking fixtures almost, that people will most people from the outside will say, oh, well, Leeds, they should win that. But they just got to be a little bit wary of those games for me.
Yeah, that's what winning leagues are all about, isn't it? The playoffs are normally full of teams who can beat the best teams, but then slip up on the lesser days. If I say, particularly with Burnley and Sheffield United and Sunderland on the form that they are, you've got to be relentless. You've got to just be at it every day, and that's where Leeds' really enviable squad depth should be an advantage if it's managed properly.
Yeah. Exactly. And our next stop takes us to Hull City, who had to return from their game at Stoke City empty-handed following a 2-1 defeat, which still leaves them in a precarious position in the table. Now, what did you make of the game, Stuart?
It was really odd. It was odd in the sense of a little bit like what we've just been talking about. Hull were excellent for half an hour, played some really, really good football, went 1-0 up, dipped slightly, but were generally good over the whole 90 minutes. But didn't get the job done. Yep. And that's the difference between sides at the bottom and sides at the top. A Leeds, a Burnley, a Sheffield United will get the job done. Hull, couple of defensive slip-ups, failure to really make it count when they're 1-0 up and they lose the game. And, again, it was only last week's podcast. I was so enthused about how well they played away from home. I think they're in a good shape. I think they're moving in the right direction. But I think that game was a reminder, because it was at the MKM Stadium, that they still have a bit of a mental block when it comes to playing at home. They've won 4 games under Sayers. Only the first of them was at home. I think they've only won 2 games at home all season. 15 points at home in the last 12 months.
Yeah,
it's letting them down. And when you do, because I was talking to Sayers about it and saying, well, is there a sort of lack of ruthlessness in front of goal? And then he said, well, we scored 3 at home to Leeds United. And that's the frustration. You know, it's there, it's in them, but I think possibly the significant thing about them scoring 3 against Leeds United is that they were 3-1 down.
Yeah.
And it was spit or bust time. I said spit there. Yeah, and that's and you've kind of got no choice. But when you're in a position to actually win the game, maybe that's when just the odd doubt creeps in, because it's not just been a problem under Sayers. It was particularly a problem under Liam Rosenior. Let's face it, under Valter, they struggled to win home or away, so you can't read too much into that. But it's been an underlying problem for them, and I think it's just a psychological hurdle for them to get past, because it's not stopping them playing well. You know, we'll maybe talk a bit later. They've made good signings. They've got a good coach. They're generally in a good shape. You know, and if they're sort of win one, lose one from now until the end of the season, they'll be safe from relegation. But you can't put all your eggs in getting all your points away from home. They need to get over this barrier. But as soon as they do, I think they'll be in a very good place.
I think, you met some good points there, Stuart. You've seen Hull a lot more than I have. It's almost as if they sort of need to sort of grind out a win and it be tight and get over the line, but they also need to they need that sort of 90-minute performance as well. They sort of need both of them, really, don't they? And I think there's a few things that are obviously coming into play there. I think there's a psychological aspect, clearly. You know, there's some of the longer established players have been part of these sort of, poor runs at home before. I think there's probably a details thing, stuff about, the set pieces, set plays, that comes into it, lack of concentration at times. And I think also probably another factor, I mean, I spoke to Sellers this week, is the pitch as well. I mean, it's to be fair, it's a time of year where, a lot of pitches around the country are showing a bit of wear and tear, and obviously in Hull's case, they've got the rugby there as well. So I think that's another added sort of factor in the pot, if you like, regarding Hull's issues at home. But we've touched on it before. They've got some big games before the end of the season on home soil, and they really do need to sort it out if they're going to have a pull out of trouble and not have a really, really fraught and tense end to the season. They'll probably be, I think they've got 3 out of 4 away now, haven't they? They'll probably be quite happy about that fact, because they've been quite handy on the travels of late. But that's not, you can't just count on when you're a side at the bottom. You just can't count on your away form, can you? You've got to pull out some wins at home at some stage, and it's something they've wrestled with pretty much all season, isn't it? And they've got to assimilate a lot of these new players as well. So, there's a fair bit to do in Sellers' in tray there, isn't there?
Yeah. And not only can you not count on the away form, you don't want to. You've got a couple of thousand watching you away from home. You've got 20,000 watching you at home. You want to put on a show for them. You want to send them home happy. And I think that's significant too. Leon talks about the psychology of they've got a few players who've been through this bad run. Well, to be honest, if they've got 11 new players and a new coaching staff, they've still got 20,000 people in the stand who've definitely been through this bad run. And that sort of nervousness can creep in. There's always that feeling. They say I watched Hull play, and they really were really good in the first half. But you think, it's getting near half time, and you're thinking it's only 1-0. We've all been there before. It's only 1-0, and then I think it was the 43rd minute. He gives the lad too much space, he equalises, and you just can't help but think, I know how this ends.
Yeah.
And as I say, they did play well second half. It wasn't like that goal destroyed them. They continued to play well, but it just takes away that belief, doesn't it, in the stands and on the pitch that you can get the job done, and so it proved to be. So I think it'll be a significant day if they can just rack up a home win pretty quickly, whether it be the spawniest win ever or whether it be a 7-0 or whatever. Just get the job done. Get that monkey off your back. That could make a big difference to them.
Yeah. I think I'll just say it quickly. I think the fans have been pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Not that I'm too much, but that nervousness, if they don't sort this out, then when you go into the real crunch time in, and second half of March, April, fans get nervous, don't they? So
also they're human, yeah.
You know, and that's why they really need to get a couple of wins before then.
It's not that they don't want to support the team or anything like that. Just the natural reaction, isn't it? You know, you see those chances go and you can't help but, you know, let out a groan and just be worried about it. So it would be nice to see their minds put at rest.
Yeah. And now we turn to the EFL Trophy clash between Rotherham United and Bradford City, which saw the Bantams leave as the victors and progress to the next stage of the competition with a 1-0 victory. Now, what did you make of the performances from both sides, Stuart?
I think what it boiled down to, in my eyes, Bradford looked really hungry to win that. Rotherham didn't. You know, we talked before. Leon made the point about Leeds ticking off those lesser games. It's those games that are letting Rotherham down. Continue to, you know, Paul Rayner came out afterwards and he was talking about Cheltenham and games like that where Rotherham just haven't quite been at it. You know, had plenty of the ball for probably the first half hour and the last half hour, but weren't really forcing the issue. It was more sort of comfortable possession. There didn't seem to be that desperation to score. You know, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking of the old Rotherham manager Neil Warnock talking about you got to die for the 3 points.
Yeah,
you know, there wasn't that feeling about it, and you know, Bradford were under the cosh for the first half hour, and it seemed as though it got to the stage where they realised, hang on, Rotherham have had all of this ball and they're not hurting us. Yeah. So why don't we throw a few punches? And they did, and they made some really. I mean, they were pre-planned apparently, but they made some really positive half-time substitutions, bringing on Jamie Walker and Anthony Starcevic. Again, go back to what we were saying before with Leeds. Walker's in the same position as a Nonto and a Ramazani. He's not been getting the starts. Come on, then let's see what you can do, sort of thing. And he came on and he really pushed them on. And honestly, I mean, Graham Alexander was so frustrated. They had Bradford had 3 penalty appeals, and it took till the third one for them to get a penalty. And he said to us afterwards, he said, "If I hadn't got that, I'd have probably gone home." he was really getting wound up about it, you know. And it's good to see people getting wound up about a Football League Trophy game in front of a crowd of 3,000. You know, over 1,000 of them were Bradford fans. It really mattered to him. You could see it really mattered to the club, and with good reason. I've talked about this competition before. They're a game away from Wembley, and I hope if Bradford do get to Wembley, I hope some of the Rotherham players flick that final on the TV and think that could have been us.
Yep.
You know, because you know, the game itself, a fairly nothing game, but the prize at the end of it, well worth the effort. Yeah. And I say, Alexander was delighted with the application of his team. He was delighted with the impact his subs had made, and the fact that he had 5 cup-side players who were all in the dressing room before and afterwards, willing them on. And he kept saying what a squad effort this is going to be. They've really made a big effort this January to build a big squad. And now, as with Leeds, you've got this big squad, use it. Yep. You know, make sure everyone plays a part, whether they be playing or not. Make sure your substitutes are really on it when they come off the bench. And from that respect, they ticked an awful lot of boxes. As you said in the intro, they slipped up at Wimbledon. They'd lost a tight game 1-0, and that had ended their losing streak. But this was a great way to bounce back and to really show that they mean business this season. And it was encouraging to see from their perspective.
I think Bradford had an incentive from last year as well. I mean, they I can't remember. I think you might have done the game, Stuart, when they played Wickham. I know I watched it on the television in the. It was semi-final, wasn't it? It was roughly this time last year, and Bradford were brilliant on the night, and it was a pudding of a pitch, but they were so desperately unlucky, weren't they? It was a real smash and grab raid from Wickham at the end, and they didn't deserve that, Bradford, and I think even the Wickham manager said that as well. So there was a sort of like settling a score a little bit of that aspect, and. I mean, I think it's the first win at the New York Stadium for Bradford as well. That's a nice one to tick off as you've said, a big travelling support for the competition, and it'll be nice to, they'll have felt good coming home from Rotherham for once. But yeah, I think very disappointing for Rotherham. I'd say it's the only EFL Trophy, but they've got history in this competition as well. They won it a few years ago, and
they know what it's like.
Yeah, and I know for a fact that Tony Stuart likes a day out. He likes to get a new outfit, and he'll like the bank balance as well. So I know deep down he'll be very disappointed about what's happened. And obviously Paul Rayner spoke afterwards, and you can bet your bottom dollar that Steve Evans would have been the one coming up to do the press if they'd have won. So that suggests to me that I think they might subsequently downplay it, but I think there'll be a fair bit of disappointment there because, let's face it, it's not been a great season for Rotherham, has it? They've picked up a little bit since Christmas, but this was something to potentially salvage from a tough season, and it's been taken away from them. And you sort of look at them now, they've got a little, we spoke about all the divisions, haven't we? There's a couple of playoff spots available for any teams that sort of finishes with a wet sail potentially and gets into the playoffs. That's, it's probably more so because there's not been that much consistency from a few other teams in the league. But if Rotherham don't get it, they've got to get back on the horse. And if they don't get a few wins sort of pretty much straight away and get over this, the season's pretty much done, isn't it? And I think they've got Shrewsbury this week, and then they've got some. Look at the teams they've got to play. They've got to go to Blackpool. They've got to play Reading. They've got a derby against Barnsley. If they win them, or they get a decent return, 6, 7 out of 9, then they're in there still, aren't they? They've got that little bit of a sniff. But if they don't, then it's pretty much season over, isn't it? And I'm sure they'll be, rancour, and they'll be talking about Evans' position, this, that, and the other. Hopefully, from a positive side, it won't happen for Rotherham in that perspective. But they've got to. I think the bottom line is they've got to get over it very, very quickly, or else the season's pretty much done, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'd say they've been in, they've been in decent form since Christmas time, but they're chucking in too many of these games, aren't they, to really get ahead of steam. And Leon mentioned the pound, shilling, and pence, which is very important. Yeah. The sort of prestige of going out of Wembley. Also, Wembley is their big aim now, the playoff final. Yeah, it'd be handy for those members of the squad who weren't involved a couple of years ago to have played in the Football League Trophy final, and therefore Wembley not be new to them. We know what a big deal it is in players' minds. These things all help, but more than anything, I say it just disrupts that momentum that it felt like they've been building at Christmas. You could write off Birmingham in the sense that they played well. Steve Evans was pointing at refereeing decisions and all this sort of thing. It was an honourable defeat at the very least. It's not something that knackers your season or anything like that. Yeah. Suddenly, if you follow it up with defeat, and that's 3 defeats in 4 games, it's just taken the air out of the balloon, hasn't it? And given that they're playing catch up, with those playoff places available, you really need to get ahead of steam. And again, to refer back to what I was saying, to make other teams nervous about Rotherham are coming, and we know Rotherham's record, and we know Steve Evans' record, and all this sort of thing. That's the only card they've got to play now, really. Frustrating from their point of view that they just didn't seem to be up for it enough, and that's not anything you ever once said about you as a professional footballer. No.
I suppose Bradford getting used to Wembley as well, but let's hope they can finish in the top 3. Well, that could be another.
That's true.
Yeah. And next, I wanted to ask you both a question about the transfer window and who you thought had a good window and who had a bad window this past month. What did you make of the January transfer business of our clubs this year, Leon?
Yeah, some sort of good, some not so good. I think Sheffield United have covered the bases, haven't they? Chris Wilder, he'd made no secret of the fact that he wanted quite a bit of business. He's spoken consistently about the bench, the numbers of kids on that in the first half of the season, the academy players. 1 or 2 have had little sniffs, but he was sort of saying it's detrimental for them to actually bring them on. He has to put them on to flesh out a bench and maybe give them the experience of being around the group, but a bit unfair to sort of throw a few of them on. So they've ticked quite a few boxes. Haven't they made some good signings? Clark and Holding. They know about Brayton Diaz. Cannon's got a very good record at this level. The boost of the firepower. Chowder is someone who Wilder has liked for donkey's years by the sound of it. So they've got to be pretty happy with things. Huddersfield have made some good moves as well, but unfortunately the thing that's sort of stalked them this season is sort of luck on the injury front, isn't it? Desperately unfortunate for Joe Taylor to injure his hamstring and be out for 4 to 5 weeks, but I think that's the way that the cookie sort of crumbles, really, or has done for them this season. I think Hull have made some astute signings, some championship ready, some players who can know the level and who can affect games and maybe contributions to sort of nick some wins, likes of Matt Crooks and Geldhart, and be interested to see how Joseph gets up to speed quickly, and obviously John Egan at the back as well. If they can keep him fit, he's a sort who knows the level and can sort of organise defences. Bradford have done some good work, and I think Stuart might mention as well with Leeds. I mean, they've not done anything, but it's I think that's just a positive sign of their sort of squad depth, really, isn't it? You touched on it earlier that they've got some gun players from the bench who can come on and impact football matches when they're sort of tight. The likes of Gonto and Joseph, others too. They'd walk into virtually all championship sides and serious ones as well. And I think the one disappointment for me is probably Barnsley. I mean, Darrell Clark said it consistently. Judges at the end of the window. Well, if you sort of look at them, and they've sort of brought a goalkeeper in on loan, but they've sort of lost one in selling Ben Killip, and obviously his position looked a little bit fraught, didn't it? After Clark basically said that the new loan keeper Gauchi would be his number one last Thursday, and to be fair to Killip, he's done pretty well, hasn't he, since he's come into the side? So penny for his thoughts there. But he wanted 2 strikers in. They just brought one in. A French striker who's pretty unproven. Well, he's unproven in England. He's come from a few tiers down in France, and there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders straight away. And he really needed, for me, they needed to. It's okay bringing him in. Nothing, they'd obviously seen potential there, but they really needed someone who knows the level, who's experienced. He needed for me to come in as a second striker. So he's got a load of pressure on his shoulders straight away. So looking at the sides who I think could have done better. It's fair to say that I think Barnsley are high on that list.
Yeah, it felt like Barnsley needed, if not quite a Hull level window, then certainly heading in that direction. Plenty in, plenty out, because it was clear that Darrell Clark had spent the first half of the season sort of assessing the characters as much as anything, and there were quite a few he wasn't sold on.
Yeah,
and the other one that disappointed me was Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah,
obviously getting Shade Charles back, that was brilliant. Well done to them for pushing the boat out on that. But you felt they missed an opportunity at centre back and at centre forward, and in their case, and maybe to a degree in Barnsley's case, their own fault. I mean, Sheffield Wednesday can't keep going down this route where they turn a, whatever it was, 35-day window into a 5-day window because they don't talk to each other for the first 3 weeks. And Barnsley, bit of a splurge on the evening, certainly kept me on busy rocking out stories of ins and outs on the night.
Happened before, though, hasn't it?
It has happened before, but it's happened so often that you just get frustrated that clubs, fall for that trap again. You look at Huddersfield; they did their business early. I mean, okay, everyone's got different budgets, everyone's got different needs, but Huddersfield, I say, they then had to dip back in because of Joe Taylor's injury, but they were kind of in a position really with a week to go where well, certainly before Taylor's injury, where you felt they were happy with what they've done, whereas Barnsley, it was left very late, too late. Sheffield Wednesday the same. I mean, Sheffield Wednesday got a couple of players in. Armstrong looks a good decision. Sissoko, an exciting winger, but seems like a little bit of a luxury when you've already got Masaba and Gassama. Not a bad signing by any means, but just other areas that they needed to look at more. That's kind of my feeling on those two, that they've kind of paid the price for leaving it a bit. Leeds, we'll only know at the end, but I'm kind of in Leon's camp and certainly in Daniel Farker's camp that, yes, I'm sure they could have got another number 10 who would have given Brendan Arrington a bit of competition, another number 9 option, but at what cost? Yeah. What might it do for the dressing room?
Yeah.
People of our age sort of remember Asprilla coming into the Newcastle United squad when they were absolutely flying, and suddenly upsets the balance of that title challenge in the Premier League because they're suddenly trying to work away in for him. You've got some really good players, as we already mentioned, who are not playing really enough game time for where they need to be in their careers. You push them one further down the pecking order, you risk having an unhappy camp and not having that togetherness you need. So it was cautious from Leeds, but I personally think it was the right decision. But whatever you think, you'll either be proven right or wrong. Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Because the thing is, we discussed this a couple of weeks ago in terms of Leeds and their transfer business, because we discussed the whole idea of, do they really need to be getting many players in? Because you run the risk of sort of, we'll get this guy in and we'll try and shoehorn him into the squad. Because then, as you said, it could disrupt the chemistry, disrupt the balance, and then you're just going to have a fair few of really unhappy players thinking, hang on, he's just come in and now you want us to give him our position for every week. I mean, of course, there's not going to be a happy time.
No, I agree with you, Mark. I mean, it's one of those, the level of player that Leeds are going to bring in, say, someone from a Premier League club who's got pedigree at this level. Cameron Archer, they're obviously wanting to bring him in. He's going to want to go to Leeds. He's going to want to be playing every week, isn't he? Really?
Of course he is. Yeah.
You can't. What can Farke? He can't say that. He can't.
Like Joe Burrow's scoring goals as he is.
Yeah, he can't do anything, can he? Farke can't. He's not that sort anyway, isn't he? He's a fair manager in that regard. So I think that's a big thing that came into it. I'll just quickly touch on Middles, but I thought it was a weird window, wasn't it? Really, they brought in a big name in the division in Morgan Whittaker. Ian Acho should be you'd look on paper, he'd probably be a decent. He's got pedigree, a good replacement for Lati Laff. But this just seems so. They sold Matt Clark to Derby. Okay, not the first choice centre half for Middlesbrough, but a decent enough player at the level, and their problems have all been defensively, haven't they? And to be fair, they brought Travers in as a goalkeeping option, but they still look. They've they brought players in sort of looking sort of going towards one goal, but they haven't done enough in the other respect. And I think just quickly as well, sort of Barnsley and Rotherham, it's a sort of interesting one, isn't it? Really, they're probably sort of thinking, well, we've got Birmingham are probably going to win the league. Wrexham are throwing the money. They're probably going to. It's them or Huddersfield who are probably going to finish second. Maybe Wickham as well.
Yeah.
Disrespect them. Do we put all this money in to try and get in the playoffs to potentially have a go and go up this season, or do we sort of keep a little bit back for the summer? So I think there's sort of maybe that aspect of it as well may come into play. And obviously Rotherham they've got rid of one or two players, but they've still got some players there on championship money, although big money for the level, the likes of Jordan Hugel. So there's that little side of it as well, and ultimately there's a big prize at the end of it if you do go up, isn't it, from the League One to the Championship. But I think the Sheffield Wednesday one, as Stuart said, I think that one is a little bit more reprehensible, because I think there's a real chance for a couple of teams to get in the playoffs. And okay, the smart money would be on whoever's, there's 4 going for 2 places. The 2 who miss out, I think they'll still have a strong chance of getting to the final. But daft things happen, don't they? Yeah. I think I probably mentioned last week, a side could be going for second. It could be two who are going for that second automatic slot. Say they both miss out. It's, oh God, we're in the playoffs. Some team, Sheffield Wednesday, are 8th. They win on the last day. They get into 6th. They've got all the momentum, haven't they? So that's the one I sort of didn't. You sort of thinking of sides not pushing that bit more.
Yeah.
In the window. That's the one that I can't sort of understand.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I have a little bit of sympathy with Middlesbrough. I think they're another one who you feel like they could have just gone with another 3, 4, 5 days, and who knows, maybe they might have signed. Yeah. Their issue really was that Emmanuel Latilas, that deal didn't go through till after the English window had closed, which is just unfortunate, really, because, you often have these discussions about, well, why aren't everyone's windows aligned? But of course, the American season doesn't start till the end of February. No. So you kind of understand it, but it really put Middlesbrough in a difficult position, because you just wonder, and we'll never know because he certainly won't tell us, but you just wonder if he'd had a few more days, if Michael Carrick might then have gone out and signed another defender and addressed that thing. Maybe he wouldn't, but it put them in a difficult position, scrabbling around, and that's a pity for them. But at least they got Iheanacho in, so that they had a replacement for Latilas. But as Leon says, it does feel like they've been too fixated on one end of the field.
Yeah. And finally for this week, I will turn to Stuart for his Team of the Week before turning to Leon for his Player of the Week. So, Stuart, who has made your Team of the Week nomination this week?
Well, this might be the easiest Team of the Week conundrum I've ever been posed. I suppose I'll dance the dance by pointing out how Sheffield United have kept the pot boiling well and all that sort of thing. But let's be honest, there's only one team it can be. 9 goals scored, none conceded. It's got to be Leeds United. For all the reasons we've talked about. I won't waste any more time on that.
Yeah. And Leon, your Player of the Week nomination?
Well, I'm singing from. We're in the same pulpit at the church, and we're singing from the same hymn sheet. You can't avoid Leeds United, can you? I think at one point when they got the second goal at Coventry, it was 7 goals in something like 72 minutes, something like that. It's an hour, 7 goals in an hour and a quarter, and there should have been more really. So it's got to be a Leeds player. I mean, I've been lucky in the respect that I've been at them both, I suppose. But there's been a few contenders. Solomon, he's been really good in both the games. Assists, looking lively, really up for it. Really, really good signing for Leeds. Dan James, although being picky, he should have scored at least one at Coventry. Everything else, he was brilliant. He's sensational pace. He's got a real hunger and drive about him, but just sometimes that final option, although in fairness, he was very unselfish on Saturday in setting a few chances up, but he probably could have been a little bit more selfish with at least one at Coventry. Tanaka, Stuart's seen more of him over the season than me. He's a really nice footballer, isn't he? Yeah. His positional sense is great. He looks after the football really nicely. Joe Perreault, he probably would have been a real contender if he hadn't messed up with a chance at Coventry. Really casual at the end, and he should have scored that. And the first thing I thought, I could imagine Farker on the bench going absolutely berserk, because he was just a real casual flick of the foot. All he had to do was just stroke it in the net, and he went for the Hollywood finish. But he's been, that aside, he's been really good. But I think the one I'm going to go for is Firpo, because he was, they all sing his name, a bit of a cult hero, but he's actually, he's a pretty good player, isn't he? And he set up 3 goals against Cardiff. Some really good pinpoint crosses. He did some good work at Coventry as well. I mean, sometimes Stuart again, he's probably better versed talking about him, but sometimes you just think, what is he doing? He just wanders up the other end of the pitch and just sort of does his own thing and goes rogue a little bit. But he does impact games, and he's clearly an adventurous fullback. He just loves getting put forward and contributing, doesn't he? And he's had a lot of trials and tribulations in his time at Leeds, but he's still there, and he's putting his hand up, and he's having a great time.
Yeah. 9 goals in a week, and you go for a left back. Brilliant. Just shows, how the goals are coming from everywhere for Leeds at the moment.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
YorkshirePost.co.uk.
Many thanks to Stuart, Rayner and Leon Wobschall, who will doubtless join us again soon for more discussions on the Yorkshire football scene. But don't forget, you can keep up to date with all the football news across Yorkshire and beyond by logging on to our website at yp.sport@nationalworld.com, or if you search for Yorkshire Post Sport, Yorkshire Post Football or even Sheffield Sport on Facebook, you can find us there as well. If you have any questions for our writers, you can get in touch using those various Twitter or Facebook pages, or email us directly with the subject matter as Football Talk Podcast at yp.sport@nationalworld.com. As ever, many thanks for listening, look after yourselves, and bye for now.